Alright, so football is where we start this edition of the SportsMax Zone. There was nothing to separate the Reggae Boys and the Soca Warriors as the Caribbean powerhouses played to a 1-all draw in the final of their two friendlies played in Jamaica. This one at the Anthony Spalding Sports Complex in South St. Andrew on Sunday. It was an especially busy night for Trinidad and Tobago and Montego Bay United defender Josiah Trimmingham, who gave the Twin Island Republic the lead in the 29th minute before, unfortunately, turning into his own net in the 94th minute to level the score. Well, in what was an extremely competitive game with many ebbs and flows, Trinidad and Tobago head coach Dwight York was satisfied with how his team applied themselves throughout the matchup.
I think what is even more impressive is that we only had literally 4 days to work with these players and to implement those ideas. And often in update, you tend to think that they will struggle. I think what that tells me that my players are really focusing and really want to make this happen. And for me, that's the biggest challenge. Being an ex-player, I kind of understand that no matter who manager comes in, if the players are not focusing and really focus on implementing your ideas, it's going to be a struggle. And so it's very encouraging, even though it's such a short space of time. The players have really shown the effort, the energy. As you said, when we get the ball, something that we struggle in the first game, we're a lot more composed and, as you said, in terms of advancing into the right areas.
Meanwhile, Jamaica's head coach, Steve McLaren, was also pleased with what he saw from his unit, especially in the second half.
I was pleased with the performance, especially the second halves in Mobay and today. And the tempo was better. It's the tempo that we want to play at. When we play with that intensity and tempo, we dominate games and we create chances. And that's what we did. I think first half 50-50 possession. The tempo wasn't quick enough. The second half 65-35 possession for Jamaica. That's what we're aiming to achieve in most of our games. So a lot of players made me think twice. But again, as I said to the players, I'll follow them and want to see them get better.
Well, our in-house football analyst, Leger Williams, he saw the game live and he joins us on set to give his thoughts. So, Liz, I think it was a highly entertaining match. One of the things that a lot of people said coming out of the first match in Montego Bay is that, it wasn't entertaining. So, you know what? Both teams actually came out to entertain. Do you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that it was helped by the fact that, because I mentioned in the review of the first game that Trinidad weren't pressing really high. So I think in the second game, when they came out with intensity, it forced Jamaica to match that intensity. And I think Trinidad and Tobago, I would say they got the better of the first half especially. And I think it was down to how intensely they were playing, how they were creating chances. Their setup was very impressive in my estimation. I think especially out of possession, I think that they did a lot of things to stifle an already somewhat ailing Jamaican midfield area. Because, as I always mention, Jamaica tend to struggle with central progression, especially when they're playing at a low tempo. And we saw some examples of that. If we would go to, I think there's a bit of play that sums up what Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago did really well. And I believe that we have it prepared now, Trini and their build-up. I think that this Trinidad team, so if we're to start it here, you see Jamaica building up in their shape, using goalkeeper Jamali Waite to play. But if I was to stop it right here, you will see Trinidad and how aggressive they are in their press. Obviously, they're leaving a free man, which would be one of the centre-backs and the goalkeeper for Jamaica, so Richard King, because you don't tend to press the strongest passer in a defensive line, and they're leaving the goalkeeper as a free man as well. But if you were to notice everywhere else, especially in the pivot, so Jamaica already don't like to progress the ball centrally. And as you can see, Trinidad and Tobago are really, really tight on the Jamaican central midfield players, forcing, as you would see there, Romeo Guthrie over there on the far side, having to drop from attacking midfield. But I think Jamaica and Richard King really exploited this well enough when he exploited the space given to him and played a lovely pass over to Daniel Green, and this just continued, and it eventually forged, I think, a really good passage of play for Jamaica. So I think this summed up the type of cat and mouse game that we saw, especially in the first half, where Jamaica were struggling to find build-up solutions, and Trinidad and Tobago, they were employing a really aggressive press, and it formed a really good type of game and the platform for a really competitive game, and it was.
Yeah, and really also exciting for the viewers who are watching. In the post-match interview now, of course, head coach Dwight York, he spoke about the fact that he only had 4 days to implement his tactic and what he wanted from the players. But he also felt, Lish, very encouraged by what he saw from the players with the small amount of time that he had to work with them. Would you say that was evident based on what you saw?
Yeah, as I was saying, I think that Trinidad were extremely impressive. It's very difficult to drill a well-oiled machine in terms of out-of-possession play, not only in your high press, but also in your mid-block or your deep block. I think Trinidad were very adept in all of those defensive phases of play. They were also good from set pieces. Their delivery was good, and you could see that they had a clear idea of the types of deliveries that they wanted to put in. They put in a couplet to the near post. That didn't work, so they went to the far post and they got a goal from it, from Trinningham. And I think that this Trinidad team was very well prepped to play against the Jamaica team. Nathaniel James, who was playing in a little bit of an unorthodox position, kind of a false nine-ish type of player. He usually plays attacking midfield, so it wasn't foreign to him, but because of his pace, he was tasked to stretch the backline of Jamaica very often. And I think just generally speaking, Trinidad, they came with a good game plan, and they did some really good work, and I would be very positive if I was Dwight York, just as he was. Yeah,
quite different from what we saw against Montego Bay, at Montego Bay against Jamaica in the first leg, because what you saw from Trinidad in that first leg, very dull and very disappointing. Let's talk a bit now about Josiah Trinningham.
Yeah.
Of course, getting the goals, all the goals on the night, sharing it with Jamaica. I don't know why, but let's talk a bit about how he went about his business, Lish, because top stuff from him.
Yeah, and I've been very impressed with him, generally speaking, throughout the season, the Jamaica Premier League season. Of course, he plays for Montego Bay United, and Montego Bay United play a back three, and he plays in the middle of that back three. And immediately after watching him the first time this season, there was a similarity that I saw between him and another player. It's actually a Jamaican player. He reminds me a lot of Wes Morgan, the former Jamaican international and former Premier League winning captain of Leicester City. I think not necessarily only the build of him, but also his authority when playing in the middle of a back three. He's a leader at the back. He's very good at dealing with crosses as well, and that's very important because Jamaica, as you could see from that switch from Richard King, which was played earlier, they tried to get the ball to the wing very often. But often, they failed to get the cross into the box efficiently enough, quickly enough. And whenever the ball came in, it was usually Trinningham dealing with it. And he had a really solid game. It's a little bit unfortunate that he would have scored that own goal. But I think if you were to look at the own goal that Jamaica scored, there was actually some really good play from Jamaica, some good build-up, and when the substitutes came on, it was Demario Phillips and Tyreek McGee who would have come on. Shamar Watson came on in the midfield as well, but Demario Phillips and Tyreek McGee are two players. I like to call them touch players. They love to have touches of the ball. They love to have those small combination plays, and if we were to look at the goal from the beginning of the play, I think that there was a lot of positivity in terms of how they have Demario Phillips, but there's a lot of positivity in terms of what Jamaica were doing on the ball once both of these two players came into play. But yeah, so I think this Jamaica team, there were some positives in terms of the players who came on, but Trinningham, unfortunately for him, he scored that own goal, but he still would be my man of the match based on his overall display of the 90 minutes.
Well, he plays in Jamaica, so he probably just
said, you know what? Right at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, last time you were here, Liz, you didn't want to make any deep analysis of the coaches, given what the friendlies meant. But we know that Dwight York is building his portfolio as a coach now. He's still reasonably inexperienced as a coach. This is his first national assignment in any case. How are you seeing any signs that he may have a good future in this role?
Yes, I saw the signs, especially in the second game. And I know you said that, I said that I didn't want to dig deep into the tactical side of things, but especially when I watch a game live, as I would have yesterday, I have no choice. My brain just going to automatically go there. And although I'm not going to be hypercritical of Jamaica or their coaching staff in Steve McLaren and all of his assistant coaches, there is something that piqued my interest in terms of, yes, Jamaica has a lot of quality in terms of their players, and that usually brings them through. But I can't recall watching a Jamaica game and I said, okay, Jamaica is doing this and I'm wowed or excited by this tactical innovation which Steve McLaren is bringing forth. Within the first 10 minutes of the game yesterday, because I was there with expert videographer Najee Dyer from SportsMax, and I told him just video the first 10 minutes because immediately I saw things that could easily be picked up, and you saw a distinct shape in possession, distinct shape out of possession. You saw direct rolls, and they play a three at the back, right? So when they're pressing, Hospitales, especially the left wing back, was very aggressive. Now when you're playing a wing back system and you're pressing, that wing back has a very important role because they're now an in-between player.
That's right.
They have to be in between the winger of the opposing team and the fullback. So they have to be very intelligent in doing that. As you can imagine, that's very hard to coach. And it was executed well in 4 days. Now, as I said, I am not being critical of the Jamaica team, but I'm just saying, if Trinidad can get this clicking and working at a high level, I'm a bit surprised that I haven't seen Jamaica show that level of adaptability and quality in coaching, generally speaking, that I saw last night from Trinidad. Not that Trinidad were miles better than Jamaica or anything, but I still do think that we're lacking a bit, or Jamaica are lacking a bit of innovation when it comes down to their coaching to keep up with the rest of CONCACAF and eventually the world, because that's where they want to be at the World Cup.
Yeah, having said that, Lige, I think it's reasonable to suggest that Dwight York's squad that he used in this match, in this friendly series, is closer to his international squad than Jamaica's squad that Steve McLaren had to work with. Does that impact any at all on the narrative that you just gave about searching for the tactical side of what Jamaica was doing, but you could easily identify TNT's approach?
Yes and no, because in football, especially international football, player quality is key. Because naturally you don't get as much time to work with players. So I do think that it's yes from that point of view. But how I looked at the game, yes, there were often times when players from Trinidad and Tobago found solutions, because Sule Makala, for example, playing in the pivot for Jamaica, was largely ineffective in the game last night because Javain Jones, who came in for Trinidad and Tobago, their number 3, if you're going to watch over the footage, he played attacking midfield. He had Sule Makala on strings when he was, first of all, pressing him. Makala couldn't get the ball. And then when Trinidad had the ball, Makala couldn't stay with Javain Jones.
Jones is a former MLS Cup winner, though, with Seattle. Yeah.
No, but so he's a very talented player. That's what I'm saying. Player quality is key.
Yes.
But everything that I was praising the Trinidad team for had nothing to do necessarily with the quality of the players. It was all about the tactical shape and how easily they were able to adapt to that.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the Jamaica squad, right, people would say, okay, maybe these Jamaican players aren't used to playing this continental style of football where you're building up with 3 defenders, 2 pivots, you have your wing backs high and wide, your wingers holding with half space this, half space that. Almost all of the top Jamaica Premier League teams employ systems like that. Mount Pleasant play a 3-2 in build-up, 5 across the front line. They play a very continental style of football. We've touched on that several times. Cavalier do the exact same, especially recently, where they've been playing a 4-2-3-1. Ainsworth holds the width on the left, Calvin holds the width on the right, and they play with their 2 pivots, Reed and maybe Dwayne Allen, and the rest of the 3 defenders form a 3-2-5 base. Waterhouse play a 3-1-6. Arnett play a 3-1-6. Attacking, I'm talking about all attacking shapes here. Yeah. So these are all shapes that are very common to the Jamaican players. So there's no reason why we see them playing in these shapes and they aren't able to execute the same patterns of play when they go to the national team. So that's why I then have to not point a finger, but possibly arch it a bit. I'm not going to point it full. I'm going to right? So that way, I'm not giving full blame, but I'm still a little bit nervy because I'm saying that Jamaica should be doing a little bit better tactically.
Yeah, I hear you just now, and a couple of things. It just sounded to me, the last thing you said in terms of the fact that they play similar shapes in the Jamaica Premier League, but are unable to effectively operate within those shapes when they play for the national team. Could it just be an issue of playing higher quality players? So it's one thing to execute effectively when you are at Mount Pleasant playing against Vere United, who is not as good, or you're at Arnett Gardens playing against Dunbeholden, who is not as good. But when you're playing against the Trinidad and Tobago national team, who can pick up what is happening and counter it, it becomes more difficult to operate effectively. So isn't that more an issue of player quality than it is an issue of coaching? I'm just asking. I'm not sure here.
Naturally, there is a player quality gap because I think only 5 Jamaica Premier League teams had players in this squad, 5 or 6 out of the 14. So naturally, there is an aspect of player quality to it, but it's also, these are the best of the best Jamaica Premier League players we're seeing for the most part.
Far from the best Jamaican players.
Yeah, but remember from the first time I came on last week Friday, I said a lot of the issues that we see for the main team transpose themselves to this team. So tactically, right, if we were to look at how Trinidad were pressing, I didn't want to get into the tactics.
No, man, let's get into it.
We're here. Trinidad and Tobago were pressing in a 3-2-5. I'm even sitting up. I'm sorry. I'm excited. Trinidad and Tobago were pressing in a 3-2-5. That means their attacking midfielder, his role is to press Jamaica's number 6, their central defensive midfielder, as Jamaica are playing a 4-3-3, right?
Yeah.
So that's Jones and McCullough. Jamaica's other 2 midfielders, Guthrie and Anglin, 4 club. Their instruction from their coach, I could bet 100 times out of 100, would be for one of them to drop and give that pressing pivot player in Jones a decision to make. Because if it's just simple numbers, it's simple math. If a pivot drops and it's 2v1, all of a sudden Jones either has to stay with his marker or he's going to be forced to play a boaty role where he's going to be in between 2 and trying to jump to the other one. And then if the ball is played into McCullough, Jones jumps, McCullough plays a wall pass to a centre-back, the centre-back plays an immediate pass to the other midfielder, he's free as a bird to progress the play.
Yeah.
So these are very, very simple. I'm an analyst. I do not have a coaching badge. I just watch a lot of football. If Elijah Williams can pick up these small things, I suspect that one of the more progressive coaches in his time should be able to do so in Steve McLaren. As I said, the finger is not. It's more a knuckle at this point. But I expected better from this Jamaican team.
Yeah, I hear you, boy, and I suspect we'll have this discussion at some point again in the future. Quickly, I noticed that the coach, the Jamaica coach, that is Steve McLaren, was up in the stands as opposed to being on the touchline. Apparently, he wanted to get a better view, but you don't seem to think that that better view helped.
Well, I mean, he wasn't really impacting stuff too much from that high up, but I understand because I personally love watching football from as high as possible, half line. But I think a big part of it was actually giving, because the coaching staff for this camp involved Jamaica's best young, bright coaches, or most of them at least. Marion Gordon was on the coaching staff as he usually is. We saw goalkeeping coaches, young coaches, Andrew Peart. We saw a lot of the, Rudolph Austin was on the coaching staff as well. Coach Sewell, the goalkeeping coach from St. George's College and Mount Pleasant. So there's a lot of good young coaching talent on the Jamaican coaching roster. Yeah. So I think Coach McLaren was just giving them a job to, you know, go out there and get your feet wet in international management. Yeah,
and quickly in 30 seconds, because I noticed in the post-match press conference, you put the question to Coach McLaren as to whether he had seen any players he feels he can go forward with. His response was, well, hear what, young lad, I would love to do this again. I think if we do this again a few more times, it could benefit everybody, the players, the coaches, the JPL, the Jamaican setup. But at no point did he name a player. Yes, at no point he answered the question, named a player. Why do you think that is?
Probably because he needs to go over the footage again. I assume.
And maybe the height didn't help. He needs to.
I saw a couple of players that I would like to see in and around the squad going forward. But
who are those? Quickly.
Well, for one, at least one, I'll say Kyle Ming. I think he started both of the games and he was very impressive at right back. And that's generally a problem area for Jamaica. So I think he was very comfortable. And I think he should have more of a look in
What
that
about
role.
Demario Phillips?
I mean, he's been getting look-ins and he has made...
Not with McLaren, though.
Not with McLaren, but and he came off the bench twice and made impacts. I think it's always going to be a tussle between...
But you thought he wasn't all that impressive in the first game on Thursday?
Yeah, in the first game he was all right. In the second game he made a huge impact.
Okay.
Huge impact. But I think it's always going to be between him and Anglin as that local midfielder in the Jamaica squad. And for me, especially lately, Anglin has been more than edging that battle.
Yeah, well, Liz, as always, we always enjoy when you stop by on the SportsMax Zone. Thank you so much for your input, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, I'll be here all week, don't worry.
Oh, well, that's good to know that you're coming to it. Liz Williams, of course, our football analyst. We're going to take a quick break and come right back.